Welcome to today's Mishnah Berurah class. In today's class, we'll be focusing on Siman 128. We're still learning the laws of Nesias Kapayim, the laws of raising the hands or Brechas Kohanim. It is a very, very long Siman. We have gone through 30 different laws so far, and today we will be landing on our feet by looking at what we have to say about the raising of the hands when you are going to lower the talus upon them. So we mentioned already a few times about a few things that we do as part of the customs surrounding the Siyas Kapayim. So we talked about the not staring and not having people up there who you might stare at and you might not be able to pay attention. So it gives you an idea about what it means to pay attention. Paying attention means you have to pay attention. You can't just kind of, half hear or not really give your full attention to something. You really have to give your full attention to the whole thing. So this is what we're talking about. So we said in the previous halacha in 30 that someone who has different deformities on their body, the deformities are a distraction. So you can't have somebody up there doing the Siyas Kapayim with the distraction. They'll have something weird on their hands or whatever it is, right? So maybe they'll do some hand puppets. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do hand puppets under the talesim. So now we're going to learn. We're in 31 over here. If the place has a custom, as we had mentioned, that they're going to drape the talus over their faces, okay, and they also drape the talus over their hands. But interestingly, the Shulchan Aruch points out they drape it over their face. The Kohanim drape the talus over their face, even if they have on their face and hands all types of weird things. They can still give you the blessing. And the Ramah adds, now, okay, he says face, but he means your hands have to be under the talus too. Okay. But if they're outside, woo, look at all the all the stains on their hands. That doesn't count. Okay, so that's what the Ramah adds. We all agree that that's what we're talking about. You have to cover the distracting stuff. Okay, so Mishnah Berurah points out that when we say that you can't have people up there where you're going to be staring at them. Okay, if you don't have such a custom, but this person wants to do it on its own. Okay, because of the things that he does, that's also a distraction, and that's even if all the Kohanim agree to do that as well. In order to that, there should be no distinction between all the Kohanim. Nonetheless, you can't because people are still going to look at them because they changed the custom and they're going to focus on that, right? So if people don't follow the custom correctly, that's distracting. Okay, so that's the big chiddush over here. There has to be a standing custom to drape the talus over the face and over the hands. But you can't just say, well, this guy over here, he has all the stains on his fingers. We're gonna all start just covering our hands and face. No, it doesn't work. It has to have been a pre-existing one. Now, the Mishnah Berurah goes on draping the talus. Okay. So he's saying, he says that it can't just be that in certain places this custom doesn't suffice, where the community covers their face, okay? Because once they know that there's a guy up there who has weird stuff on his hands, okay, they're gonna start looking at that. All right, and some younger people don't have talesim. So that's why the minhag has to be on the Kohanim. Okay, so that's the important diak. The minhag is on the Kohanim to cover themselves. Okay, now the Ramah adds that the point is that the distractions work for whatever is covered. So the Mishnah Berurah's last comment is that the draping has to go over the hands to cover the blemishes on your hands, and that also works for your face too. So even though the Shulchan Aruch says your face, he means even your hands, because the talus is all the way to your hands. And everyone would agree that it has to be all the way down. Okay, so let's talk about the weird things that appear on your body. If your hands, is in Halakha 32, it says, if your hands have istis, okay, and pua. Okay, what are istis and pua? Okay, so the Ramah just says that they are different colors. Okay, so they happen to be istis happens to be a blue dye, and pua happens to be a purplish dye or a reddish dye. One may not do the blessing of the Kohanim. Why? Because people are going to look at their colors on their hands. If most of the people there work in this business, and this is a normal thing amongst them, then they can go ahead and lift up their hands. So the Mishnah says, where they're dropping the talis over their hands, that works, just as we mentioned earlier. Now, we also say that if everybody does the same job, so our halacha is saying that this isn't a common job in the community. Because if the job is common, we've already learned that people aren't even if people don't normally engage in that trade, but we learned that would be okay. Okay, we saw that earlier. So this case is talking specifically about was a number, even though where it's not so common to see this job, but other people have that job, and non-Kohanim have these things on their hands, then on the Kohanim would be okay. So it's a little bit of a leniency above and beyond of what we had said earlier. So if we knew this guy is Mr. Dye Guy, and we know that his hands are always weird colors, he could also do it. Okay? But nonetheless, since the minhag is that we drop the talesim over the whole upper body, it's also fine. Okay. 33. So here's another mum. Here's another blemish. Is you do not do a good job at pronouncing a Hebrew. You have terrible Hebrew. One who says the aleph and ayin, well, ayin alephin. He say to the ayin, you're an aleph, and anything like that, one may not lift up their hands. What does that mean? So the Mishnah explains that this is the same rule as people who have problems with speech. They can't use their mouth properly and they can't use their tongue properly. Well, what does this mean, aleph and ayin? Okay, so the Mishnah explains this is similar to the rule saying someone who says a ches like a hey, or they say shiboleth and siboleth. So if you know the case of shiboleth and siboleth from Sefer Shoftim, that was how different tribes in Israel identified each other and didn't want to, the Anshe Gilad and the Boston accent. So, or people don't pronounce the R's properly. Open the door, get in the car, that type of thing. Yeah, so that would be, yeah. So when people don't, if people don't pronounce it in a way where it's understandable. Okay? Now, if the entire community says it like that, then that's okay. Okay? Because that's how people will read Hebrew in that community. So if you have a Chassidish Havara, right? And you say, right? Even though that is not the proper pronunciation, since that's how the Hasidim like to read it, that's perfectly fine. Okay? And so therefore, for this reason, that our poskim, meaning later than the Shulchan Aruch, say people don't know how to distinguish between these different pronunciations. Like they can't pronounce an ayin, and they can't distinguish it from an aleph. An ayin technically is a guttural sound. Like that's how that's what I called Sodom and Gomorrah, because when they used to hear it, it was Stom v'Omoira, right? Omoira, right? And so it sounded like a g sound to them. So they call it Sodom and Gomorrah, which is not a g sound, it's a o sound. But those who heard it couldn't differentiate. Okay, it was an aleph, which doesn't really have a vowel sound. It's a silent letter. It only follows whatever sound is of the vowel sound. It doesn't impact it. But you don't want to hear somebody say Ya'ir and Ya'ir. Right? Ya'ir would be somebody saying, I'm waking you up. Right? It's supposed to Ya'ir, which is I am shining light upon you. Okay, in the blessings. Some people also say that in places like Russia, where they have a lot of people who do shiboleth, right, where a lot of these sounds are messed up. Even though there are people there who are know the difference in the sounds between the shin, where the sound is on the right side, okay, and the sin, where the sound is on the left side. Nonetheless, since that's a common thing that they pronounce stuff like that, then it's forbidden for that person to be reciting Berurah Hanim in that place. But if you're in a place where they don't like how you're reading it, they should ask you to not do it, or just pelt you with esrogim. When in doubt, just pelt people with esrogim. That's always the answer to everything. If you're not familiar with the case of pelting with esrogim, there was one time a Kohen who spilled the water oblations done over Sukkot on his feet, refusing to follow the standard practice of the Beis HaMikdash. So to punish him, all the people standing there threw the esrogim at him. One of my favorite stories in the Talmud. All right, another person who can't go. A child that has not sprouted two hairs. Okay, we're talking about signs of puberty. So it does not have pubic hairs. They may not do Nesias Kapayim. It's only for adults. Okay, by himself. Okay, but with other older Kohanim, it's okay, because he's got to learn how to do it, and that's how he learns. Okay, now if he has the two hairs, the two signs of adulthood, at least two hairs, he can do it even by himself. Okay, that's only doing it every so often, and not to do it all the time until he has a full beard, right? And then once he has a full beard, he can do the Nesias Kapayim whenever he wants. Okay, even by himself on a regular basis. And everyone who reaches the age where their entire beard can fill out, even though it hasn't filled out, we call that person someone who is of an age where their beard has filled out. Okay, and we talked about this earlier in Siman Nun Gimel, where we talked about having a person who was an appropriate Shliach Tzibur. Okay, so everyone should stand in awe of the beard. That's what we learned there. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah explains the Shulchan Aruch. He says, if he's 13 and one day, we assume that that's okay, that he has gone ahead and is old enough to be doing that. He probably did have these two things. Just like the Ramah says earlier in chapter 55, Halacha Hey. Okay, so you don't have to inspect, you just assume that 13 in one day is old enough. But anything less than that, they may not do it by themselves, and even every so often. Why? Because it's not appropriate for a child to be leading a blessing for the congregation. It's not appropriate. However, a child can go ahead and practice with older Kohanim, and the reason why is because he can go ahead and say the blessing is because he's learning. Okay, and this is echoed by a few people. Now, this type of education is not like all other times of educating a child, because there you start like at age 5 or so, okay, maybe even 6. Okay, but with this case, it's when he learns to actually do Nesias Kapayim the way the Kohanim do it. So the age is a little bit different. Now, the Shulchan Aruch puts a distinction by saying he can only do it every so often. Okay, and again, the reason why is because this is also because of the honor and dignity owed to the congregation. There should be certain types of covenant tzibur, because it's not honorable for them to constantly be blessed by a little kid. So when he's standing by himself and he doesn't have like a full beard, he shouldn't do it all the time. But if they're stuck and he's the only one, then it's okay. Okay, we say it every so often. And in our countries, where the Nesias Kapayim is only done on Yom Tov, then this child can go ahead and do it every Yom Tov, even by himself, in order he can consider himself to be part of the Kohanim of the Jewish people. Because doing it every so often, even though we don't do it all the time here in Ashkenazic lands, is still considered every so often. So there they're talking about every day. Okay. And the Ramah says, look earlier in 53, and 8. So the Mishnah explains that there we explain that even if he has a little beard, that's considered having a beard, okay, if he's at least over 18. Therefore, that's considered somebody who has a full beard, as long as it could technically fill out at that time. Okay. Let's see, 35. Okay, another thing that prevents you from serving as a Kohen. Kohen, Shahar gets a nefesh. Kohen who has killed somebody, even